She raised his genius in silence. The billionaire CEO learned the truth when her teen saved his IPO. The boardroom went silent as the teenager's fingers flew across the keyboard. Every eye in the room was fixed on the screen, watching lines of code appear faster than most people could read. Investors worth billions sat frozen. The media cameras stopped rolling. Even the air seemed to hold its breath. Grayson Vale stood at the back of the room, his hands gripping the edge of a chair so hard his knuckles had gone white. He watched the girl work, watched the elegant architecture taking shape on the screen, and felt something crack open in his chest. This wasn't just good code. This was brilliant. This was someone who thought like him, who saw systems the way he did, who understood the DNA of what he'd built better than anyone on his own team. But it was the woman standing beside the girl that made his heart stop. Alina. After 16 years of searching, of wondering, of late nights staring at old photographs and deleted emails, there she was. Still beautiful. Still composed. Still carrying that quiet strength that had captivated him from the very beginning. And the girl beside her had his eyes. His features. His hands. The realization hit him like a freight train. "Oh God," he whispered. "She's mine." The teenager finished typing, hit enter, and the entire Vale tech infrastructure began rebuilding itself in real time. The vulnerability that had threatened to destroy everything, the fatal flaw that could have collapsed a $5 billion IPO, disappeared like it had never existed. The room erupted in applause. But Grayson couldn't move. Couldn't breathe. Couldn't do anything but stare at the daughter he never knew he had, and the woman who had raised a genius in complete silence. This is their story. A story of brilliance and abandonment. Of a choice made in fear and a life built in courage. Of a teenager who saved her father's empire without knowing who her father was. And of a reunion that happened in front of the entire world, when a billionaire CEO finally learned what he'd lost 16 years ago. Before the headlines. Before the IPO crisis. Before a 16-year-old girl walked into a boardroom and changed everything. There was a moment when two brilliant minds collided and created something neither of them expected. Alina Reyes was 28 years old when she first met Grayson Vale, and she was not impressed. She'd been brought in as a consultant on a government-funded cybersecurity project, one of those massive initiatives where multiple companies competed for a contract that could define the next decade of digital infrastructure. Vale Tech Industries was one of 5 firms bidding, and Grayson Vale was already a legend in the industry. Young, ruthless, brilliant. The kind of CEO who appeared on magazine covers and gave TED Talks that went viral. Alina had watched one of those talks once. She'd found it compelling but performative. All style, she'd thought, and probably not enough substance. She was wrong. The first meeting happened in a secure facility outside Washington. 20 people crammed into a conference room, all of them supposedly the best minds in cybersecurity. Grayson walked in 15 minutes late, which annoyed her immediately. He didn't apologize. He just started talking, and within 5 minutes, Alina realized she'd completely misjudged him. He wasn't performing. He was thinking out loud, breaking down complex security architectures with the kind of clarity that only came from genuine understanding. He saw patterns others missed. He asked questions that revealed gaps in logic before anyone else even noticed they existed. And when he finally paused and looked around the room, his eyes landed on her. "You disagree with something I said." It wasn't a question. He'd somehow noticed the slight shift in her expression, the way she tilted her head when he made a particular point about encryption protocols. "I don't disagree," Alina said calmly. "I just think you're approaching it from the wrong angle." The room went quiet. No one contradicted Grayson Vale. Not in public meetings. Not when contracts were on the line. But Grayson just smiled. "Explain." So she did. She walked to the whiteboard and rebuilt his entire argument, showing him where his logic was sound and where it could be exploited. She was precise, methodical, and utterly confident. When she finished, she turned back to face him. Your solution works for 95% of scenarios. But it's that last 5% that will get you killed in this industry. Grayson stared at the board for a long moment. Then he started laughing. Not the polite, professional laugh of someone trying to save face, but genuine amusement. You're absolutely right, he said. What's your name? Alina Reyes. Well, Alina Reyes, would you be interested in working on this project full-time? Because I just found the person I've been looking for. That was how it started. A professional collaboration that quickly became something neither of them had planned for. For 3 months, they worked together almost every day. Long hours in secure facilities, late nights in hotel conference rooms, endless video calls discussing architecture and vulnerabilities and solutions. Grayson challenged her constantly, pushed her thinking, refused to let her settle for good when she could achieve brilliant. And Alina pushed back. She didn't defer to him. She didn't treat him like a celebrity CEO. She treated him like an equal, and that fascinated him. Why aren't you intimidated by me? He asked one night after everyone else had left. They were in his temporary office, surrounded by whiteboards covered in their combined work. Alina looked up from her laptop. Should I be? Most people are. The money, the company, the reputation. It usually creates a distance. I'm not interested in any of those things. I'm interested in the work. And you're good at the work, so I respect that. The rest is just noise. Grayson studied her for a moment. You're remarkable. I'm practical. No. You're remarkable. And you don't even realize it. Something shifted between them in that moment. The air felt different. Charged. Alina felt her heart rate pick up, felt herself becoming aware of how close they were sitting, how his eyes hadn't left her face. We should keep working, she said quietly, breaking the moment before it could go further. But it was too late. They both knew something had changed. The first time he kissed her was 2 weeks later. They just successfully demonstrated their security protocol to a room full of government officials, and the project was approved. Everyone was celebrating, but Grayson had pulled Alina aside into an empty hallway. We did it, he said, his voice warm with triumph. We did, she agreed, smiling. I need to tell you something. And I need you to know I'm not saying this because we just won the contract. I've been wanting to say it for weeks. Grayson. I can't stop thinking about you. When I'm working, when I'm not working, when I'm in meetings that have nothing to do with you, you're still there. In my head. In my thoughts. And I don't know what to do about it because you're the most brilliant person I've ever worked with and I don't want to mess that up. But I also can't keep pretending I don't feel this. Alina's breath caught. She knew she should be careful. She knew getting involved with Grayson Vale was complicated in ways she couldn't fully predict. But standing there in that empty hallway, looking into his eyes and seeing the same vulnerability she felt, she couldn't bring herself to walk away. Kiss me, she whispered. So he did. What followed was 3 months of the most intense, complicated, beautiful relationship either of them had ever experienced. They kept it private, partly because of professional concerns, partly because they wanted something that belonged only to them. No media. No speculation. No pressure from the outside world. They met in hotel rooms and quiet restaurants far from the centers of power. They talked about everything. Their childhoods, their dreams, their fears. Grayson told her about the pressure of running Vale Tech, about the constant demands from investors and board members who saw him as a commodity rather than a person. Sometimes I feel like I'm disappearing, he admitted one night as they lay tangled together in the darkness. Like Grayson the person is being slowly erased, and all that's left is Grayson the CEO. Alina traced patterns on his chest. You're not disappearing. You're right here. With you, I am. But the moment I walk out of this room, I have to be someone else again. Someone harder. Someone who doesn't hesitate or doubt or feel too much. That's not sustainable. I know. But I don't know how to change it. The company needs me to be that person. The board, the investors, the thousands of employees who depend on Vale Tech for their livelihood. They all need me to be strong and certain and untouchable. And what do you need? He turned to look at her, his eyes serious. This. You. Something real. But reality has a way of crashing through even the most carefully protected spaces. And their reality came in the form of a $5 billion military contract and a pregnancy test. Alina realized she was pregnant on a Tuesday morning. She'd been feeling off for a week, tired and nauseous in ways that didn't match any illness she'd had before. She bought a test on her way home from work, took it in the bathroom of her small apartment, and watched as 2 lines appeared. Pregnant. She sat on the edge of the bathtub for a long time, trying to process what this meant. She is 28 years old, financially stable, and perfectly capable of raising a child on her own if necessary. But this wasn't just any child. This was Grayson's child. And Grayson was in the middle of the biggest negotiation of his career. Vale Tech had been shortlisted for a massive military contract, the kind that could define the next decade of the company's trajectory. Grayson had been consumed by it for weeks, barely sleeping, constantly on calls with government officials and military leaders and his own board of directors. The timing could not have been worse. But she had to tell him. She owed him that much. She called him that evening, asked if they could meet. He suggested his penthouse, said he had a few hours before another round of conference calls. When she arrived, he looked exhausted. There were dark circles under his eyes, and his usually impeccable appearance was rumpled, like he'd been wearing the same clothes for days. "Are you okay?" she asked, worried. "Just tired. This contract negotiation is brutal. But I'm glad you're here. I needed to see you." He kissed her, and for a moment, she almost didn't tell him. Almost decided to wait until after the contract was finalized, until he wasn't so stressed and overwhelmed. But secrets had a way of growing, and she didn't want this to become something hidden and shameful. "Grayson, I need to tell you something. And I need you to really hear me, okay?" He pulled back, his expression shifting to concern. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong. At least, I don't think so. But it's going to change things." She took a deep breath. "I'm pregnant." The words hung in the air between them. She watched his face, watched the emotions flicker across his features. Shock. Confusion. Fear. And something else, something she couldn't quite read. "Pregnant," he repeated, like he was testing the word. "Yes. I'm about 6 weeks along. I took a test this morning, and I'll confirm with a doctor this week, but I'm certain." Grayson sat down heavily on the couch, his hands running through his hair. "Okay. Okay. This is. I need a minute to process this. I know it's unexpected. We were careful, but nothing's 100%. And I want you to know, I'm not expecting anything from you. I can handle this on my own if I need to. But you deserve to know. Of course you deserve more than that. We both do. This is just, the timing is complicated." Complicated. The words sat between them like a wall. "The contract," Alina said quietly. "The board just issued a directive about my public image. They want me completely focused, completely clean. No distractions, no scandals, nothing that could jeopardize the negotiation. If this gets out right now, if the media finds out I'm having a child with someone they don't know about, they'll spin it every possible way. It could cost us the contract. I'm not a scandal, Grayson. This is a baby. Our baby. I know. God, Alina, I know. I'm not saying this right. He stood up, pacing across the room. I just need time to figure out how to handle this. How to protect you and the baby and the company all at once. You can't protect everything. Sometimes you have to choose. He stopped pacing, turned to look at her. What are you saying? I'm saying I need to know if you're in this with me or not. I need to know if you're willing to step up, regardless of what the board wants or what the media might say. Because I'm having this baby, Grayson. With or without you. But I need to know where you stand. The silence that followed was suffocating. Alina watched Grayson struggle, watched him try to find the right words, the right answer. But the longer he stayed silent, the clearer the truth became. He wasn't ready. He didn't know how to choose her over everything else he'd built. And maybe he never would. I need time, he finally said. Just give me a few days to think about how to handle this properly. Please. Alina felt something crack inside her chest. She'd known this might happen. She'd prepared herself for the possibility that Grayson Vale the CEO would override Grayson Vale the man. But knowing it intellectually and feeling it emotionally were two completely different things. Take all the time you need, she said softly. But I won't wait forever. And I won't let our child grow up feeling like a complication in your life. She left before he could respond, before the tears burning behind her eyes could fall in front of him. She made it to the elevator, down to the lobby, into a cab, all the way back to her apartment before she finally let herself break down. 3 days later, Grayson called. He said he wanted to talk, said he'd figured some things out. Alina agreed to meet him at a quiet restaurant, her heart cautiously hopeful that maybe he'd found a way forward. But the moment she saw his face, she knew. He'd chosen the company. The contract. The empire he'd built. And she and their unborn child were the casualties of that choice. I'm sorry, he said, and she believed that he meant it. I'm just not ready for this. Not right now. Maybe after the contract, after things settle down. No, Alina interrupted. Don't do that. Don't ask me to wait for a maybe. Either you're in this now, completely, or you're not. There's no middle ground with a child. I can provide financially. I can set up accounts, make sure you have everything you need. I don't want your money, Grayson. I want a father for my baby. But I can see now that's not something you're capable of giving. So let me make this easy for you. Walk away. Go save your company. And I'll handle this on my own. Alina, please. I mean it. I'm releasing you from any obligation. You don't have to worry about me or the baby affecting your precious contract or your public image. We'll disappear. You'll never have to think about us again. He looked like she'd physically struck him. You don't mean that. I do. Because I'm not going to spend the next 18 years fighting for scraps of your attention, competing with board meetings and investors and whatever else you decide is more important. My child deserves better than that. It deserves a parent who shows up, who's present, who doesn't treat him or her like a complication. She stood up from the table, her legs surprisingly steady despite the way her heart was shattering. Goodbye, Grayson. She walked out of the restaurant, out of his life, and never looked back. For weeks, Grayson tried to find her. He called her number until it was disconnected. He went to her apartment, but she'd already moved out. He contacted mutual colleagues, but no one knew where she'd gone. It was like she'd vanished completely, erased herself from every system and database. Which, of course, she had. Because Alina Reyes was a systems architect with a genius-level understanding of digital infrastructure. If she wanted to disappear, no one would find her unless she wanted to be found. Grayson threw himself into work, telling himself that he'd made the right choice, that he couldn't have been the father she wanted him to be anyway. Vale Tech won the contract. The company's value soared. Grayson became even more successful, even more untouchable, even more alone. But late at night, in the quiet moments when the CEO mask slipped, he thought about her. About the child growing somewhere without him. About the choice he'd made and the life he'd traded for success. He never stopped regretting it. And he never stopped hoping that somehow, impossibly, he might find them again. Alina moved to a small city 3 states away, chose a place where no one knew her name or her history. She rented a modest apartment, found work as a freelance consultant, and prepared for motherhood alone. Her daughter was born on a cold November morning. 7 pounds, 8 ounces. Perfect in every way. She named her Kaia, which meant the sea in Hawaiian. Strong, deep, full of hidden currents. The moment they placed her in her arms, Alina fell in love in a way she'd never experienced before. This tiny human, this perfect blend of her and Grayson, looked up at her with dark eyes that already seemed to see too much. "Hello, Kaia," she whispered. "It's just you and me now. And I promise you, that's going to be enough. I'm going to give you everything you need. You'll never feel like you're missing anything, because you're not. You're complete exactly as you are." She kept that promise for 16 years. Raising Kaia was unlike anything Alina had expected. From the beginning, she was different. Not just bright, but extraordinary. She started reading at 3, not children's books but technical manuals and science encyclopedias. At 4, she was solving math problems that confused most adults. At 5, she taught herself basic coding by watching tutorial videos on her laptop. Alina didn't push her. She'd seen too many gifted children burned out by ambitious parents who treated their intelligence as a commodity. Instead, she nurtured her curiosity gently, providing resources and guidance but never pressure. She left algorithm puzzles on the refrigerator, casual challenges that Kaia would solve over breakfast. She turned coding into a game, building digital treasure hunts that taught her programming logic without feeling like lessons. She encouraged her to explore, to make mistakes, to learn at her own pace. "Why do I think differently than other kids?" Kaia asked when she was 7, after a particularly difficult day at school where she'd struggled to connect with classmates. Alina pulled her into her lap. "Because your brain works in special ways. You see patterns that others don't notice. You understand systems that most people find confusing. That's a gift, Kaia. But it also means you might feel alone sometimes, like no one else understands how you think. Do you understand? I try. But honestly, sweetheart, I think you're smarter than I am. And that's okay. You don't need me to understand everything about how your mind works. You just need me to love you and support you. And I do. Always." Kaia wrapped her arms around her neck. "I love you too, Mom." As she grew older, her abilities became even more apparent. By the time she was 10, she could break down and rebuild computer systems with an ease that was almost frightening. She saw vulnerabilities in code the way some people saw spelling errors. She could analyze complex algorithms and spot inefficiencies in minutes that would take professionals days to find. But Alina never exploited her talents. Never pushed her into competitions or tried to monetize her abilities. She wanted her to have a childhood, to develop emotional intelligence alongside her intellectual gifts. She taught her empathy, kindness, the importance of using her abilities to help rather than dominate. "You're going to be able to do incredible things," she told her on her 12th birthday. "But the most important thing you can do is be a good person. Brilliance without compassion is just cruelty with better tools." Kaia nodded seriously. "Like Dad?" Alina's breath caught. She'd never told her about Grayson. Never mentioned her father by name or explained the circumstances of her conception. She'd simply said her father wasn't part of their lives, and Kaia had never pushed for more details. Until now. "What makes you ask about him?" Kaia shrugged, suddenly looking younger than her 12 years. "I just wonder sometimes. If he's smart like me. If he thinks like me. If maybe that's why I'm different. Alina chose her words carefully. Your father is very intelligent. He builds systems, just like you do. But he made choices that meant he couldn't be part of our lives. That was his choice, not yours. And it doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you. It means he wasn't ready to be the father you deserved. Do you think he thinks about me? I don't know, sweetheart. I hope so. But what matters is that you're here, you're loved, and you're exactly who you're meant to be. Kaia seemed to accept this answer, and she didn't bring up her father again for years. But Alina knew the questions were still there, lurking beneath the surface. Someday, she would want real answers. And she didn't know what she would tell her. By the time Kaia turned 16, she had become something remarkable. Not just intelligent, but wise beyond her years. She had her mother's emotional intelligence and her father's analytical brilliance, a combination that made her uniquely capable of understanding both systems and people. She attended a public high school, deliberately choosing the ordinary over the prestigious private academies that had tried to recruit her. She wanted to be around diverse people, different perspectives. She tutored struggling students, built websites for local nonprofits, and used her coding skills to create apps that solved small community problems. Alina watched her grow into someone extraordinary, and every day she felt a mix of pride and heartbreak. Pride because she was everything she'd hoped she would be. Heartbreak because she deserved to know her father, and her father deserved to know her. But she'd made her choice 16 years ago, and she'd built a life around that choice. Changing course now felt like betraying everything she'd worked for, everything she'd built. Until the day Kaia came home from school with an excited look on her face. Mom, you have to see this. There's this huge tech story blowing up online. Vale Tech Industries is having some kind of crisis with their IPO. Their AI model got leaked and there's a vulnerability that could crash the whole system. Alina's blood went cold. Vale Tech. Grayson's company. The empire he'd chosen over her and Kaia. Why are you telling me this? She asked, trying to keep her voice steady. Because I think I can fix it. Look at this code fragment they released. It's brilliant architecture, but there's a flaw in the security protocol. I can see exactly where it breaks down. Mom, I could patch this. I could fix what they can't figure out. She pulled up her laptop, showing her the leaked code. And the moment Alina saw it, she recognized Grayson's work. His signature style, his approach to architecture, his brilliant but slightly arrogant assumption that his systems were unbreakable. Kaia, this isn't our problem. But people are going to get hurt. If this IPO crashes, thousands of employees will lose their jobs. Investors will lose billions. The whole tech sector could destabilize. And I can fix it, Mom. I know I can. Alina looked at her daughter, at her earnest face and her genuine desire to help, and felt her carefully constructed walls beginning to crumble. She didn't know this was her father's company. Didn't know that fixing this code would bring them into direct contact with the man who'd walked away from them. But she couldn't tell her not to help. Not when it went against everything she'd raised her to be. If you're going to do this, she said slowly, you do it anonymously. No names. No contact information. Just the code. Let them figure out who fixed it after the crisis is resolved. But don't they deserve to know who helped them? They deserve to have their system fixed. Everything else is just ego. You taught me that, remember? It's about the work, not the credit. Kaia nodded, accepting her logic. Okay. Anonymous. Just the patch. She spent the next hour rebuilding the security protocol, her fingers flying across the keyboard with that distinctive combination of speed and precision that always amazed Alina. She watched her work, watched her dismantle and rebuild something her father had created, and felt tears burning behind her eyes. She thought like Grayson. Worked like him. Had the same relentless focus and brilliant intuition. But she had something Grayson had lacked at that age. Compassion. Emotional intelligence. The ability to see beyond the code to the people it affected. She'd given her that. She'd taken Grayson's genetic gift and shaped it into something better, something more complete. When Kaia finally finished, she turned to her with a triumphant smile. Done. This patch doesn't just fix the vulnerability. It improves the entire architecture. Whoever built this system is going to be impressed. Are you sure you want to send this? Alina asked, giving her one last chance to step back from the edge they were approaching. Mom, this could save thousands of jobs. Maybe tens of thousands. How can I not send it? She nodded slowly. Then send it. But Kaia, listen to me. Whatever happens after this, whatever comes from this decision, I want you to know that I'm proud of you. Not because you're brilliant, but because you're good. That matters more than any amount of intelligence. She hugged her tightly. I love you, Mom. I love you too, sweetheart. So much. She watched her compose the email, watched her attach the code, watched her type a simple subject line that would change everything. Stop the IPO crash. Start here. And then she pressed send, and 16 years of carefully maintained distance evaporated in an instant. At Vale Tech headquarters, Grayson hadn't slept in 3 days. The leaked AI model had created a nightmare scenario. Every security team he'd hired had looked at the vulnerability, and every single one had told him the same thing. They could patch it temporarily, but the core architecture was compromised. Rebuilding would take months. The IPO, scheduled for the following week, would have to be postponed indefinitely. Billions of dollars were evaporating. Investors were threatening lawsuits. The board was in crisis mode. And Grayson, for the first time in his career, didn't have an answer. He was in his office, staring at the leaked code for the 1000th time, when his assistant knocked urgently. Mr. Vale, you need to see this. An email came in through the public help system. Someone's claiming they've fixed the vulnerability. We've gotten hundreds of those. They're all scams or incompetent. Sir, our security team looked at this one. They say it's legitimate. More than legitimate. They say it's the most elegant solution they've ever seen. Grayson felt hope flicker for the first time in days. Show me. The assistant pulled up the email on the large screen in his office. The subject line was simple. Stop the IPO crash. Start here. No name. No contact information. Just an attached file and a brief message. Your architecture is brilliant but flawed. This patch fixes the vulnerability and improves system efficiency by 42%. Use it well. Grayson opened the attached code and started reading. Within seconds, he knew this was different. This wasn't someone guessing or applying standard solutions. This was someone who understood his work at a fundamental level, who could see not just what was wrong but why it was wrong and how to make it better. He scrolled through the code, his heart beating faster with each line. The solution was perfect. More than perfect. It was exactly what he would have done if he'd been able to see the flaw himself. Who sent this? He demanded. We don't know, sir. The email was sent through multiple proxy servers. Whoever did this knows how to hide their digital footprint. Grayson stared at the code, at this anonymous gift from someone who clearly knew him, knew his work, knew how he thought. Get this to the security team immediately. I want it tested on every possible scenario. If it works, if it's really this good, we might be able to save the IPO after all. If you're enjoying this story of love, secrets, and second chances, make sure you're subscribed to Mr. Ellington Love Lines. We bring you the most powerful real-life love stories that will move your heart. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a story. The testing took 48 hours. 48 hours of running the code through every possible attack scenario, every vulnerability test, every stress analysis they could devise. And every single time, the patch held. Not just held, but exceeded all expectations. "It's perfect," the lead security engineer told Grayson, his voice filled with awe. "Whoever wrote this is a generational talent. I've never seen code this clean, this efficient, this brilliant. They didn't just fix your problem. They made your entire system better." Grayson felt something he hadn't felt in years. Wonder. Someone out there understood his work better than he understood it himself. Someone had seen what he'd built and made it better. "We need to find the person," he said. "We need to know who did this." But despite every resource Vale Tech had, every investigator they hired, every digital forensics expert they consulted, the sender remained anonymous. A ghost who had saved his company and disappeared without claiming credit. The board wanted to proceed with the IPO. With the vulnerability fixed and the system improved, they were back on track. But Grayson insisted on one additional step. "We're going to announce what happened. We're going to tell the world that an anonymous genius saved this IPO, and we're going to publicly invite them to the investor summit. I want this genius to demonstrate the fix in person, show the world what he or she accomplished. And I want to meet the genius. I need to meet him or her." The board thought he was crazy. The media called it a publicity stunt. But Grayson didn't care. He had to know who had this kind of understanding of his work, this kind of brilliance. He had to know who thought like him. The invitation went out publicly, broadcast across every tech news outlet and social media platform. "To the anonymous engineer who saved our IPO, we want to meet you. Come demonstrate your work at our investor summit. Show the world what you've accomplished. And let us thank you properly." At first, there was no response. Days passed with silence. Grayson started to accept that whoever had helped them wanted to remain anonymous, wanted to stay hidden. Until, 5 days before the summit, an email arrived. "I'll come. Not for credit. Not for money. But because people deserve to see that the system is safe. That their jobs are protected. That's what matters." The email was signed with a single initial. K. Grayson stared at that letter, feeling something shift in his chest. Something familiar. Something he couldn't quite name. "Send the person credentials," he told his assistant. "VIP access. Whatever is needed. And find out if the person is coming with someone." The response came quickly. "I'm bringing my mother. She's the one who taught me everything I know." Her mother. This brilliant, mysterious engineer had a mother who'd taught the genius everything. Grayson felt a strange pang, thinking about the kind of parent who could raise someone this extraordinary. "They're both welcome," he replied. "We'll see them at the summit." Alina stared at Kaia's laptop screen, reading the exchange between her daughter and Grayson's assistant. This was really happening. They were really going to Vale Tech. Kaia was going to walk into that building, demonstrate her work in front of the world's most powerful investors, and come face to face with her father. And Grayson was going to see them both. "Mom, are you okay?" Kaia asked, noticing her pale face. "We don't have to go if you don't want to." "I can decline." "No," Alina said, her voice stronger than she felt. "No, you've earned this. You deserve to show people what you can do. We're going." "Are you sure? You seem really stressed about this." She looked at her daughter, at this extraordinary human she'd raised alone for 16 years. She deserved to know her father. She deserved answers to the questions she'd stopped asking but never stopped wondering about. And maybe, just maybe, it was time for all the secrets to end. "I'm sure," she said. "But Kaia, there's something I need to tell you before we go. Something about your father." Kaia's eyes widened. "What about him?" Alina took a deep breath. His name is Grayson Vale. And Vale Tech is his company. The system you fixed, the architecture you admired, it's his work. You think like him because he's your father. And in 3 days, you're going to meet him for the first time. The silence that followed was deafening. Kaia stared at her mother, her brilliant mind clearly racing through 16 years of questions, half-answers, and carefully maintained silence. Grayson Vale, she repeated slowly. The Grayson Vale. The CEO. The one on all the magazine covers. Yes. And he doesn't know about me. It wasn't a question. Kaia had already processed the implications, connected all the dots in the way only she could. Alina's throat tightened. No. He doesn't. When I told him I was pregnant, he wasn't ready. He chose the company over us. So I left, and I made sure he couldn't find us. I wanted to protect you from feeling like you weren't wanted. But I fixed his system. I saved his company. And now he wants to meet me. He wants to meet the person who saved his IPO. He has no idea that person is his daughter. Kaia stood up and walked to the window, her hands shoved deep in her pockets. For a long moment, she just stared out at the street below, processing. Alina waited, her heart hammering, terrified of what she might say. Are you angry with me? She finally asked. For keeping this from you? Kaia turned to face her, and she was surprised to see not anger in her eyes, but something closer to understanding. I don't know what I am yet. I need time to think about this. But Mom, I have to ask. Why now? Why tell me now instead of before we go? Because you deserve to walk into that room knowing the truth. You deserve to decide how you want to handle this, what you want to say to him. I've made enough choices for you. This one should be yours. Does he know we're coming? That it's us? No. He just knows someone named Kay is bringing the mother. He has no idea. Kaia nodded slowly, her analytical mind already working through scenarios and possibilities. So I'm going to walk into that boardroom, demonstrate the patch I built on his architecture, and he's going to see me for the first time. In front of all those people. All those investors and cameras and reporters. Yes. Unless you want to back out. We can still decline. I'll support whatever you decide. No. Kaia's voice was firm. I want to go. I want to meet him. I want to look him in the eye and see who he is. Because Mom, you've told me he chose the company over us. But I fixed his company. I saved what he chose instead of me. And I think I need to understand why it was worth it. What was so important that he gave us up for it? Alina's eyes filled with tears. Oh, sweetheart. I'm so sorry you have to carry this. Kaia crossed the room and hugged her tightly. You have nothing to apologize for. You raised me. You were there for every birthday, every school play, every late night when I couldn't sleep. You taught me how to be a good person. You gave me everything I needed. He's the one who missed out. Not me. You're so much better than I was at your age. That's because I had you as a mother. She pulled back, looking at her seriously. I'm nervous. I'm not going to lie. But I'm also curious. And I think maybe it's time for him to know what he walked away from. The investor summit was being held at Vale Tech's headquarters, a gleaming tower of glass and steel in the heart of the financial district. Security was intense. Media crews lined the streets. Everyone who was anyone in the tech and investment world would be there to witness what was being called the most dramatic IPO save in history. Alina and Kaia arrived exactly on time. They were escorted through the main entrance, given VIP badges, and led directly to the boardroom where the presentation would take place. No private meeting. No warning for Grayson. Just the stark reality of walking into a room full of strangers and facing the man who didn't know she existed. Are you ready for this? Alina whispered as they stood outside the boardroom doors. Kaia took a deep breath. As ready as I'll ever be. The doors opened, and they walked in. The boardroom was packed. Every seat was filled with investors, analysts, and journalists. Cameras lined the back wall. Grayson Vale stood at the front of the room, mid-sentence in his introduction, when the doors opened and Kaia and Alina entered. His words died on his lips. For a moment, the entire room seemed to freeze. Grayson stared at Alina, recognition washing over his face like a tidal wave. Shock. Disbelief. Hope. Confusion. All flickering across his features in rapid succession. And then his gaze shifted to the girl beside her. Kaia met his stare directly, unflinching. And even from across the room, even with 16 years of distance and silence between them, Grayson knew. Those were his eyes. His features. His hands. The girl walking toward the presentation station was his daughter. Mr. Vale, his assistant prompted quietly. Are you all right? Grayson couldn't speak. Couldn't move. Couldn't process what he was seeing. Alina. After 16 years of searching, she was here. And the girl, the brilliant anonymous engineer who'd saved his company, was walking to the front of the room with a laptop in her hands and his face. Ladies and gentlemen, the moderator stepped in, sensing something was off. Please welcome our anonymous genius, here to demonstrate the solution that saved Valetech's IPO. The room applauded politely, but Grayson barely heard it. He was still staring at Kaia, watching her set up her laptop, watching her move with a confidence that reminded him so much of Alina. It hurt. Alina took a seat at the side of the room, her hands folded tightly in her lap. Their eyes met for just a moment, and in that glance, 16 years of pain, regret, and unanswered questions passed between them. Then Kaia began to speak, and the room's attention shifted entirely to her. Thank you all for being here. My name is Alina Reyes. I'm 16 years old, and I'm the one who sent the patch that fixed Valetech's vulnerability. A murmur rippled through the crowd. 16. The whispers spread quickly. Kaia continued, seemingly unbothered by the reaction. What I'm about to show you is a live demonstration of how the system works now. Not a presentation or a simulation, but actual real-time implementation. I'm going to run every attack scenario that threatened the IPO, and you'll see how the patch responds. She plugged her laptop into the main display, and lines of code filled the massive screen. Her fingers moved across the keyboard with breathtaking speed and precision. As she worked, she explained every step, breaking down complex technical concepts into language even non-technical investors could understand. But it wasn't just her explanation that captivated the room. It was the way she thought. The way she saw patterns. The way she anticipated problems before they fully materialized and solved them with elegant simplicity. Grayson watched, transfixed. This was his daughter. This remarkable, brilliant girl was his. And he'd missed 16 years of her life. As Kaia worked through the demonstration, running attack after attack and showing how each one failed against her patch, Grayson found himself moving closer. He couldn't help it. He was drawn to her like a magnet, watching every keystroke, every line of code, seeing his own thought patterns reflected in her work. The key insight, Kaia was saying, is that Mr. Vale's original architecture assumed a linear attack pattern. But modern threats are multidimensional. By introducing a dynamic response protocol that adapts in real time, the system becomes exponentially more secure. Where did you learn to code like this? One investor called out. Kaia glanced at Alina before responding. My mother taught me the foundations. She's a systems architect. Everything I know about seeing structures clearly, about understanding how complex systems interact, I learned from watching her work. The rest I figured out on my own. And you're only 16. Yes, sir. Remarkable. Absolutely remarkable. For the next hour, Kaia fielded questions, ran additional tests, and proved beyond any doubt that her solution wasn't just effective, it was revolutionary. When she finally closed her laptop, the room erupted in a standing ovation. But Grayson couldn't clap. Couldn't move. He was still staring at her, this impossible gift he'd never known existed. "One more question," a woman in the front row said, standing up. "I have to ask, Mr. Vale. You said earlier that this engineer understood your architecture at a fundamental level. That they think like you. Is there a reason for that?" The room fell silent. Everyone waiting. Cameras focused on Grayson's face. He looked at Kaia. Then at Alina. Then back at Kaia. This was the moment. The moment of truth. Make sure you're still with us, because what happens next will change everything. If you're loving this story, hit that like button and drop a comment telling us what you think Grayson should do. And don't forget to subscribe to Mr. Ellington Love Lines for more incredible stories about love, family, and second chances. Grayson walked slowly to where Kaia stood. When he reached her, he stopped, just a few feet away, close enough to see the details of her face. His eyes. Alina's nose. A combination of both of them in ways that left no doubt. "Yes," he said quietly, his voice thick with emotion. "There's a reason." He turned to face the room, but his hand gestured toward Kaia. "Kaia is my daughter. I didn't know she existed until a moment ago when she walked through that door. 16 years ago, I made the worst decision of my life. I chose this company over starting a family. I chose ambition over love. And I lost everything that mattered." The room erupted in gasps and whispers. Camera flashes went off like fireworks. But Grayson kept speaking, his voice growing stronger. "Her mother, Alina Reyes, is one of the most brilliant systems architects I've ever known. When she told me she was pregnant, I wasn't ready. I was terrified. So I chose wrong. And she chose to protect our daughter from that choice by raising her alone. And she did an extraordinary job." He looked at Kaia directly now. "You saved this company. You saved thousands of jobs. But more than that, you just taught me something I should have learned 16 years ago. That brilliance without heart is meaningless. That success without family is hollow. That being a CEO means nothing if you're not first a decent human being." Kaia's eyes were wet, but her voice was steady. "Why didn't you look for us?" "I did. 4 months. But your mother is as brilliant as you are. She made sure I couldn't find you. And maybe that was what I deserved. To live with the consequences of my choice. And now?" Kaia asked. "Now that you know I exist." Grayson's voice cracked. "Now I'm asking if you'll give me a chance. Not to make up for the 16 years I missed. I can't do that. Those years are gone. But to be part of your life going forward. To be your father, if you'll let me." The room was utterly silent. Every person holding their breath, waiting for Kaia's response. She looked at her mother. Alina nodded slightly, giving her permission to decide for herself. Kaia turned back to Grayson. "I have conditions. Anything. I'm not going to pretend the past didn't happen. You made a choice that hurt my mother and meant I grew up without a father. I'm not going to forget that just because you apologized in front of cameras. I understand. But I also believe in second chances. Mom taught me that holding on to anger only hurts yourself. So I'm willing to get to know you. To see if we can build something from here. On my terms." Grayson's eyes filled with tears. "Thank you. That's more than I deserve." "Probably," Kaia agreed. "But everyone deserves a chance to be better than they were." She extended her hand formally. Grayson looked at it, then gently, carefully, he pulled her into a hug instead. Kaia stiffened for just a moment, then slowly, tentatively, she hugged him back. The room erupted in applause, but neither of them noticed. They were lost in the moment, a father and daughter meeting for the first time, surrounded by hundreds of witnesses but somehow completely alone. When they finally pulled apart, Grayson looked over at Alina. She was crying, her hand pressed to her mouth, watching the scene unfold. "Alina," he said softly. "Can we talk? After this?" She nodded, unable to speak. The rest of the summit passed in a blur of questions, statements, and media requests. The story was everywhere within minutes. Billionaire CEO discovers secret daughter who saved his company. The world couldn't get enough of it. But Grayson handled it all mechanically, his mind elsewhere. All he could think about was the 16 years he'd lost. The birthdays. The school plays. The first words and first steps and first everything. When the last reporter finally left, he found Alina and Kaia in a quiet conference room. They were sitting close together, Alina's arm around her daughter, a united front. "I know I have no right to ask anything from you," Grayson began. "But I need you both to know that I'm sorry. Truly, deeply sorry. I made a choice 16 years ago that I've regretted every single day since. And now that I know about Kaia, now that I've seen what an extraordinary person she is, that regret is almost unbearable." Alina's voice was quiet but firm. "Sorry doesn't give us back 16 years. I know. I know it doesn't. But I want to be part of her life going forward. And yours, if you'll let me. Not just financially, but actually present. Actually there." "How?" Kaia asked practically. "You're the CEO of a massive company. You work 100 hours a week. You travel constantly. How are you going to suddenly have time to be a father?" Grayson had been thinking about this since the moment he'd seen them walk through the door. "I'm restructuring my role. I'll stay as CEO because the company needs leadership right now, especially after this IPO. But I'm delegating more. Hiring a COO to handle day-to-day operations. Cutting back on travel. Creating boundaries that actually matter." "We've heard that before," Alina said. 16 years ago, you promised you'd figure out how to balance it all. And then you chose the company. You're right. And I can't promise I'll be perfect this time. But I can promise I'll try. Really try. Because I've spent 16 years with everything the world says should make a man happy, and I've been miserable. Empty. Alone. I don't want that anymore. I want to know my daughter. I want to be part of her life. And Alina, I want a chance to show you that I'm not the same man I was then. Pretty words won't fix this, Grayson. Then let me prove it with actions. Come to the city. Let me set you both up here. I'll provide everything you need, a place to live, schools for Kaia, work for you if you want it. Not as charity, but as the beginning of making things right." Kaia and Alina exchanged a long look, that silent communication that only came from years of being each other's whole world. "We'll need time to think about it," Alina finally said. "This isn't a small decision." "Of course. Take all the time you need. But please, just consider it. Consider giving me a chance." They stayed in the city for 3 days, and during that time, Grayson showed them what their life could look like. He took them to a beautiful brownstone in a quiet neighborhood with tree-lined streets and good schools. He showed Kaia the research facilities at Vale Tech, introduced her to the team, offered her an internship if she wanted it. But more importantly, he showed up. He had breakfast with them every morning. He asked Kaia questions about her interests, her dreams, her life. He listened when Alina talked about the challenges of raising a gifted child alone. He didn't try to buy their affection or overwhelm them with grand gestures. He just tried to be present. On the 3rd day, Kaia made her decision. "I want to come," she told her mother. "Not because of the money or the opportunities. But because I want to know him. I want to see if he really can change. And if he can't, if he goes back to being the man who chose work over family, then we leave. But I think he deserves a chance to try. Alina looked at her daughter, this wise, compassionate girl who saw the world with such clarity. Are you sure? I'm sure. But Mom, we do this together. Both of us or neither of us. Alina thought about it for a long time. Thought about the life they'd built, the safety of distance, the pain of proximity. But she also thought about Kaia's face when Grayson asked her questions about her coding projects. The way her daughter lit up having someone who understood her technical language. The way she deserved to have her father in her life. Okay, Alina said finally. We'll try. But Grayson needs to understand this is a trial. He gets one chance. If he falls back into old patterns, if the company starts consuming him again, we're gone. The move happened quickly. Within 2 weeks, Alina and Kaia had relocated to the city. The brownstone Grayson had shown them became their home, a beautiful space that felt nothing like charity and everything like a fresh start. Grayson kept his word about restructuring his role. He hired a brilliant COO named Marcus Chen who took over the operational day-to-day responsibilities. He set firm boundaries around his schedule, blocking off mornings and evenings for family time. He turned down international travel unless it was absolutely critical. And most importantly, he showed up. He came to Kaia's new school for parent orientation. He helped her set up a coding lab in the spare bedroom of the brownstone. He took her to Saturday morning breakfasts where they talked about everything from AI ethics to her favorite music. He respected boundaries. When Kaia said she needed space, he gave it. When she invited him to something, he never missed it. Slowly, carefully, they began to build something that looked like a relationship. If you're still watching, thank you for staying with us on this incredible journey. Stories like this remind us that it's never too late to make things right. Don't forget to subscribe to Mr. Ellington Love Lines for more powerful stories about love, family, and second chances. And if this story has touched your heart, share it with someone who needs to hear this message today. With Alina, things were more complicated. The hurt ran deeper, the trust was harder to rebuild. But Grayson was patient. He didn't push for romance or try to recapture what they'd lost. He just tried to be a good co-parent, a reliable presence, someone she could count on. One evening, about 3 months after they'd moved, Alina found him sitting on the steps of the brownstone, staring up at the stars. "Can't sleep?" she asked, sitting down beside him. "Just thinking. About how different life looks now. How empty it was before." They sat in comfortable silence for a while. "You're doing better than I expected," Alina admitted. "With Kaia. With the boundaries. With actually showing up. I meant what I said. I'm not going to make the same mistake twice. The real test will come when the company hits another crisis. When the board demands more of you. When investors push back on your new schedule. Then I'll handle it. Because I've learned something these past 3 months. The company will survive without me being there every minute. But Kaia won't wait. Her childhood won't pause while I figure out my priorities. And I'm not missing another day of it." Alina turned to look at him. "What about us? You said you wanted a chance with me too. But you haven't pushed. Because I didn't want to rush you. You needed to see that I could be a good father first. Everything else comes second. And if I'm never ready, if the hurt is too deep, then I accept that. Having Kaia in my life, having the chance to be her father, that's more than I ever thought I'd get. If friendship with you is all we can rebuild, I'll take it. And I'll be grateful for it." Alina was quiet for a long moment. "I don't know if I can ever fully trust you again. I know. But I think maybe I'm willing to try. Not to go back to what we were. But to see if we can build something new. Something different." Something stronger because it survived being broken. Grayson's eyes widened. You mean that? I mean, I'm willing to see what happens. Slowly. With no guarantees. Can you accept that? Yes. God, yes. I'll take whatever you're willing to give. 6 months after the investor summit, life had settled into a rhythm that felt almost normal. Kaia was thriving at her new school, surrounded by friends who appreciated her mind and her heart. She'd started an internship at Vale Tech, working on ethical AI research under her father's mentorship. Grayson had found a balance he'd never known was possible. He was still CEO, still leading the company, but he'd learned to delegate, to trust his team, to value his time with his daughter over another board meeting or investor call. The company hadn't suffered. If anything, it was stronger. Grayson's public acknowledgement of his daughter and his commitment to work-life balance had made him more relatable, more human. Employees appreciated seeing their CEO prioritize family. Investors respected his honesty and his restructured leadership model. And Alina was starting to let her walls down. Slowly, carefully, she and Grayson were rebuilding something. Not the passionate romance of their youth, but something deeper. A partnership built on shared responsibility, mutual respect, and the love they both had for their daughter. One Sunday morning, the three of them were having breakfast together in the brownstone. Kaia was explaining a new coding project she was working on, her hands moving animatedly as she described the architecture. Grayson watched her with undisguised pride. You know what amazes me? How much like your mother you are. Not just in how you code, but in why you code. You both see technology as a way to help people, not just as a way to make money. That's because Mom raised me right, Kaia said simply. She did. She did an incredible job. And I'm so grateful to her for that. Alina smiled softly. We did okay, didn't we? You did more than okay. You raised an extraordinary human being. Later that day, after Kaia had gone out with friends, Alina and Grayson found themselves alone in the living room. I've been thinking, Grayson said. About the future. About what comes next. And I realize I can't change the past. I can't give you back the 16 years I missed. But I can promise you something for the future. I can promise that I'll be there. For every milestone. Every challenge. Every moment that matters. Not as the CEO of Vale Tech, but as Kaia's father. And as your partner, if you'll have me. Alina looked at him for a long moment. You know what? I think you finally get it. It took you 16 years and almost losing everything, but you finally understand what actually matters. Does that mean you'll give me a real chance? Not just a trial period, but a real, honest attempt at building something together? Yes, she said softly. I think it does. Because you've proven yourself, Grayson. Not with words, but with actions. You've shown up. You've changed. You've become the man I always hoped you could be. He reached for her hand, and she let him take it. I love you, Alina. I never stopped. Even when I couldn't find you, even when I thought I'd lost you forever. I love you too. I tried not to. I tried to move on. But you were always there, in Kaia's eyes, in her mind, in the way she saw the world. And now you're here, really here, and I think maybe we can make this work. He kissed her then, soft and tender, a kiss that spoke of second chances and hard-won redemption. 1 year after the investor summit, Vale Tech held its annual shareholders meeting. Grayson stood at the podium, delivering his report, and the numbers were strong. The company had grown. Innovation was thriving. Employee satisfaction was at an all-time high. But when he reached the end of his prepared remarks, he went off script. Before we close, I want to say something personal. A year ago, I discovered I had a daughter I never knew existed. A brilliant, compassionate 16-year-old who saved this company when none of us could figure out how. That discovery changed my life in ways I couldn't have imagined. He looked out at the audience, at Alina and Kaia sitting in the front row. I'd spent my entire career believing that success meant sacrificing everything for the company. That being a good CEO meant being available 24/7, putting business before everything else. And I was wrong. So completely, utterly wrong. This year, I learned to delegate. I learned to trust my team. I learned that I don't have to be involved in every decision to be an effective leader. And you know what? The company is stronger for it. Because I'm stronger. Because I finally understand what true success looks like. True success isn't measured in stock prices or quarterly earnings. It's measured in the relationships we build. The people we show up for. The legacy we leave that has nothing to do with business and everything to do with love. So to my daughter Kaia, thank you for giving me a second chance. Thank you for teaching me what really matters. And to Alina, the woman who raised her with grace and strength and so much love, thank you for letting me back into your lives. You didn't have to. I didn't deserve it. But you did it anyway, and that gift has changed everything. The room erupted in applause, but Grayson's eyes were only on his family. 5 years later, Kaia graduated from MIT at 21 with a PhD in ethical artificial intelligence. She'd started her own research foundation, funded by Valetech but completely independent, dedicated to ensuring technology served humanity rather than exploited it. Grayson and Alina sat in the audience, watching their daughter cross the stage. They'd been married for 2 years now, a quiet ceremony with just close friends and family. No media. No spectacle. Just a commitment to continue building the life they'd started. She's incredible, Grayson whispered. She is, Alina agreed. And she's yours. Ours. I still can't believe I almost missed all of this. But you didn't. You made a terrible choice 21 years ago, but you made the right choice every day since you found us. After the ceremony, Kaia found them in the crowd and pulled them both into a hug. Thank you. Both of you. For everything. We're so proud of you, sweetheart, Alina said. I couldn't have done any of this without you, Mom. You taught me everything that matters. And Dad, you taught me that people can change. That mistakes don't have to define us. That it's never too late to choose right. Grayson's eyes filled with tears. I'm the one who should be thanking you. You saved my life, Kaia. Not just the company, but my actual life. You gave me a purpose beyond business. You made me human again. That's what daughters do, Kaia said with a smile. We keep our fathers honest. As they walked out of the auditorium together, a family rebuilt from broken pieces, Grayson felt a contentment he'd never known in all his years of business success. He was still CEO of Valetech. Still leading innovation and driving growth. But now he did it as a father first, as a husband, as someone who understood that the truest measure of success had nothing to do with boardrooms and everything to do with love. He'd learned the hard way that you can't buy back lost time. You can't negotiate your way out of the consequences of bad choices. But you can choose to be better going forward. You can show up. You can put in the work. You can prove through action that you've changed. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, the people you hurt will give you a second chance. Not because you deserve it. But because they believe in redemption. Because they believe that people can change. Because they believe in love. The billionaire CEO who once chose his company over his family had finally learned the most important lesson of his life, that success without love is just noise. That wealth without relationships is poverty. That being at the top of the world means nothing if you're standing there alone. He'd walked away from nothing to gain everything. And the daughter he never knew existed had saved more than just his IPO. She'd saved his soul.